There used to be a time, not very long ago, when Britain, as a liberal democracy, worked on a triangle. The triangle was the state, the market economy, and the civil society, and all were more or less in balance. Since the financial crash, that isn't any more the case. How does the citizen engage to make the economy of this country and the part run by voluntary societies fair and in the interests of society as a whole? And the questions today at the panel of the Festival of Politics. The civil economy in Britain is much wider than charities. It involves the social enterprise sector, it involves cooperatives, it involves friendly societies, it involves working men's clubs, it involves mutuals. The total assets in this area are probably around £800 billion. Now that's quite a lot of muscle. What we've been trying to do today is to see how that muscle can be applied to the wider global financial community to ensure more transparency, more interest of the citizen being applied to decision makers, and to give them voice. If you take, for example, three groups who are the conglomerate bankers, big international, who are the people who put money into the conglomerates, the pension fund managers and the mutuals, our money, by the way, and you take the auditors, there certainly was a view today in Edinburgh that all of these come from the same corporate culture. So we looked at things like the Community Reinvestment Act in the States, seeing where banks spend their money. So there's a correlation between interest group and community and where the money goes, looking at money for community development initiatives, and looking at expansion of the social economy. In Scotland, for example, since the Land Reform Act, it's possible for islands to buy their own land, to buy their own future, to buy electricity, which they generate locally through wind farms, and to sell that on to the internet. So one of the key things coming through in terms of the wider Carnegie civil inquiry is devolution deep down to communities. And certainly if communities can become self-sustaining because they make money, not for profit, they make money for the community which they represent, that generates sustainable communities and addresses things like the carbon deficit at the same time.
I think there are a couple of key roles for the civil society in a new economy. First, that they can provide an alternative for us for the future, rather than an economy purely based on growth, which is unsustainable and does not lead to well-being in society. So, presenting the alternatives. Secondly, they can join together and share experiences and present a campaign to government and to business to say, actually it's not good enough. We don't want to pursue this route of unsustainable growth. We have experience to provide of what the alternative is. So those two really need to go hand in hand, and they can give the wider population something to believe in, that there is an alternative, that we don't just have to go with what we've always known.
When charities and other civil society organisations have funds to invest, they ought to be making sure these are being used responsibly and that they are being invested responsibly. And they're using this as a form of battering ram to try to exert pressure on PLCs and try to persuade PLCs to behave more responsibly.
A few things I would like to see placed in manifestos ahead of the next general election. The first thing is legislation to enable it to be easier for new alternative models of financial institutions to be developed. And secondly, to use the tax system to help ordinary citizens make investment in these organisations, perhaps through savings accounts or alternative investment models.
There needs to be greater freedom to allow communities to set up financial institutions. This may seem counterintuitive at the moment, but if you see the evidence of the US, what you see is that community-based organisations were far better at controlling risk than large organisations that have no connection to the communities. And what we need is staircasing system. So a community organisation can become a credit union can become a building society, and a building society can become a bank if they wish to, or stay on that particular path. In that way, you don't need to change the banking regulation every 10 minutes. You have a system that allows for flexibility and for growth for the organisations as well.
we need to see more of a level playing field for civic society and for community organizations. Because right now they're really operating against a system that isn't built for them. The rules aren't written for them. And they tend to end up at the end of the queue. They can't get their bank loans. They can't get investment. And they end up with projects that can't go ahead. So level the playing field and in fact even incentivize these kinds of organizations, because after all they're delivering social benefits as well as an economic benefit, and often they're operating on sustainable principles, so it's better for the environment as well. So a level playing field. Second, we should actually be auditing our government on their own stated principles of best value. And best value meaning not just cheapest, but best value for the society, for the environment, for the economy. And lastly, we need to invest much more in community development so that people in communities have the skills to actually develop their communities, work with each other, and create community enterprises that are locally based, by local people, for local people.